and then share my screen. And thank you so much for joining me during your lunch hour to learn more about Peace Corps. I really appreciate it. My name is Tamori Mayweather. I am the regional recruiter for Southern Washington and Northern Idaho. And just a little bit of a warning slash disclaimer before we get started. I am doing this information session out of my living room, and my roommate has a cat. She's the most adorable thing in the world, and she's very well behaved, but she loves attention and will launch herself from the floor to my desk without a moment's notice. So if you see a tail pass by or so, I apologize in advance. So yes, as I mentioned, my name is Tamori. I am the regional recruiter for the University of Idaho, but I am also a returned Peace Corps volunteer myself. I serve in a country called Kosovo as part of the first cohort to enter into the country. So my service was a bit nuanced in that sense, where we didn't have sort of a legacy of Peace Corps or other volunteers in country that we could reach out to. We sort of had to define what Peace Corps was, while Peace Corps in country was trying to figure out what it meant to have Peace Corps volunteers. I served in the education sector. I taught English as a second language to 4th through 9th grade in a small little village in the Paya municipality. It was on the western side of the country. Some of the secondary projects I did were teaching English as a second language, after school programs with my students. 7th through 9th grade, I was part of the monitoring, reporting, and evaluating committee, and I was also part of the cultural book committee. Kosovo has 5 official languages, but I lived and worked in an Albanian community, and about 90% of people who live in Kosovo are ethnic Albanians. But on the plus side of that, I actually spoke a dialect of the Albanian language spoken in northern Albania and Kosovo. So while Tosk is the official language or the official standard version, I actually spoke a dialect called Geg while I was in service. And here are just a few pictures of Kosovo. It's an amazingly beautiful country. If you're interested in serving there one day, I'd be happy to talk with you. But here's just a little bit of geography for you and where it's located. Where I served was in, as I mentioned, the Paya region, so it was close to the, I was about 30 minutes from the Albanian and the Montenegro border. So launching into more about Peace Corps. Peace Corps is a U.S. government agency, and our ultimate mission is to foster world peace and friendship. There's no sort of asterisk, no sort of fine print. That's our mission, and the way we try and fulfill that mission is by achieving or fulfilling 3 goals. The first goal is to send trained U.S. citizens to countries that have requested and asked us to be there. The third goal, or the second goal, is to promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the people we serve. And the third, and in my opinion, the most important goal is to learn about the culture that we're immersed in and bring that back to the United States. So that's what we call volunteers who have served return, as opposed to ex-reformers. Sort of the mission of Peace Corps never really ends even after your service. And even though Peace Corps does dabble in international aid, I feel first and foremost, if you see it, 2/3 of our mission is cross-cultural nature, so it's definitely a cross-cultural agency before anything. Volunteers serve in one of 6 different sectors in the Peace Corps. So as I mentioned, I was an education volunteer, but we also have agriculture, youth and development, environment, health, and community economic development. It doesn't matter what sort of sector you serve in, all volunteers will have the opportunity to do a secondary project. So if you're an agricultural volunteer, but you're interested in teaching English as a second language, you can do that. If you're an environmental volunteer, but you're interested in sort of community economic development or women's empowerment through sort of, small businesses, then you can do that as a secondary project. There's a lot of opportunities to collaborate with people in your community to do not just your first primary project, but also to tap into some other strengths that you might have. Here's where volunteers serve. So we serve in over 60 plus countries. And as I mentioned, I'll have to do a little bit of disclaimers on some of these slides. This is not the most up-to-date one. We have opened and closed a few countries due to various reasons. As you may all know, or if not, Peace Corps actually currently has no volunteers serving right now. These are unprecedented times. And as a result of COVID-19, we did, for the first time in our history, have to engage in a global evacuation of all volunteers. So all 7,000 volunteers volunteers are currently in the US with the opportunity of evacuated volunteers to be reinstated and re-enrolled if they so choose. And also to our mission, our goal is to begin sending volunteers back into the field as soon as it is safe to do so. And we do have the backing of the US government to do that. These are the areas that volunteers do serve in at present, and our application process is still open. We're still taking applications, and we're also still interviewing volunteers for service. And we have a current application deadline that's upcoming of July 1st, and those programs are set to leave between January and March of next year. So we're hoping, with that buffer of time, we'll be in a better place to begin sending volunteers overseas again. But we do have safety and security managers and global help coordinators that are working on a daily basis to continue to assess and reevaluate the situation. The benefits of service are, in my opinion, immense. Some of them are tangible and intangible, but I think one of the greatest benefits of service that, and one that not many people may know, is that there's no out-of-pocket cost to serve as volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, you're living and working abroad, but you're worried about programmatic fees, or you're worried about, your plane ticket costs, that's not something you have to worry about with Peace Corps service. Peace Corps service is 100% covered. So your living stipend, your housing is covered by Peace Corps. Medical and dental at the sort of same level as having a primary care physician in the United States is covered. And volunteers also have the opportunity to get student loan deferral. So with private loans, that's not something that we can really handle, but if you have federal student loans, those are loans that could be deferred during your service, because Peace Corps service is considered civil service. So you are allowed to defer your loan repayments for the entire 2 years that you're in Peace Corps. And also too, if you're interested in the federal student loan forgiveness program, then those 2 years will also apply to your cancellation. So highly encourage talking with your loan providers if you're interested in sort of learning more about that. They can talk with you further. Another benefit of Peace Corps service is that though you are a volunteer, you are working and you have a job, and all volunteers get vacation time. So that's 48 days of vacation over the course of 27 months. You can use that vacation time to travel in country, to come back to the United States, to travel to other countries. So you can, as long as you're not working, you can use that vacation time. So if you're a teacher, you can use it in the summer, or you can use it during winter break, things like that. So that is to your advantage, and it accumulates 2 vacation days per month that you have after you've sworn into Peace Corps service. Another benefit of Peace Corps is the skills and training. All volunteers have to do pre-service training. So I mentioned service is 27 months as opposed to just exactly 2 years, because all volunteers have to go through pre-service training, which includes technical training, safety and security, medical training, and of course language training. So all volunteers do have to go through that training before they swear in. And safety and security is a #1 priority of Peace Corps. Volunteers are our resources in the field, and it is Peace Corps' job in country to make sure that volunteers are as supported as possible. So all volunteers in country have access to medical officers that carry 24-hour duty phones. So if you need to call for any reason, they are available. We also have safety and security officers in each country. They are also available 24/7 for you to talk to. And all Peace Corps staff in country are trained staff members in emergency action plans. Every single country has an emergency action plan. They know how and when to consolidate volunteers for any reason. As mentioned, we had to do a global evacuation, and we were able to do that within a week's time because of these action plans that were in place, despite the fact that there were sort of systematic closures of airports and things like that throughout the world. So, and one of the reasons we were able to do that is because we do, as a U.S. government agency, have the backing of the U.S. government for support during times of crisis. Of course, tragedies do happen, and that's, sad when it does. It happens here in the United States, and as much as we try to mitigate overseas, it does take place. We do have victim advocacy specialists that are there to sort of collaborate with the volunteers, do, who are victims of crimes and things like that. And it is completely volunteer focused. So whatever the person wants to do is what they decide to do in service. But a big way that we do try to mitigate and to make sure that volunteers stay healthy and safe in service is community immersion. So knowing the language, making sure that your community members know you. A lot of volunteers, like myself included, I lived with a host family for 2 years. And so I was not just a teacher in the community, but I was connected and sort of a part of an extended family while I was in service. Benefits after serving. Here's another one of those sort of asterisks of new information where it's actually volunteers after they finish their service, when we call it COS, when they COS and become returned Peace Corps volunteers, they receive a modest readjustment allowance of over $10,000. So it is attached to inflation and generally goes up every 2 years. So that $10,000 is for you to do what you want with that money. It's not tied to education requirements. You can use it to travel. You can use it to put a down payment on a car or pay for your first couple of classes in grad school if you're interested. So you can do what you like with that money. It's to help you readjust back to life in the States or post-Peace Corps. Graduate benefits are another one of those benefits after service. There's going to be another slide that goes a little bit more into it, but we have a program called Coverdell Fellows that all returned volunteers have lifetime access to. Professional networking and career services, we do have a department within Peace Corps that is dedicated to connecting volunteers with jobs. So we have our own career services. We have a Return Peace Corps Volunteer, RPCV career link that's on the website. And employers who post that are posting specifically to outreach to and recruit volunteers or return volunteers to their employment. Federal Employment Advantage, we have something called non-competitive eligibility. So if you've ever heard of veterans preference in hiring, non-competitive eligibility is like that, but it lasts for 12 months. So if you're interested in working for the EPA, the CDC, the DOA, the DOL, any federal agencies, once you become a returned Peace Corps volunteer, you will receive that NCE status. And as long as you meet the minimum requirement for the job that you're looking to hire, you have to be considered. It doesn't mean you'll be hired, but it sort of fast tracks you through the sort of paperwork of applying for USJobs.gov. You can simply submit your NCE letter, your resume, and they'll have to take a look at your candidacy for those programs. Public loan service forgiveness is something else that I mentioned before. Of course, you'll have to talk to your loan provider to see how specifically that relates to your loans, but that is a benefit that I know that some return volunteers tap into. And also access to portable healthcare. All volunteers upon re-entry receive 1 month of healthcare paid for by the Peace Corps. You have an opportunity to tap into 2 more months if you would like and paid for by yourself. You can use your readjustment allowance to do so, but that 1 month upon return is covered by the Peace Corps. So graduate school benefits, the Coverdell Fellows Program is a memorandum of understanding that we have with over 100 universities in participation. They see Peace Corps service as a benefit to students that they're interested in attracting. So what they do is give the students or return volunteers a monetary incentive to choose their university. All fellows programs that have this memorandum of understanding with us are required to provide at least 20% of tuition coverage or the equivalent. And many of them do provide full rides. So the University of Washington, for example, has one in their Evans School of Public Policy. My alma mater has one that it is not only tuition coverage, but it's also attached to a graduate assistantship. And so it pays for room and board, or not room and board, but it gives you a stipend for living expenses on top of having a complete tuition waiver. So things that are attached to those are financial aid, scholarship waivers, scholarships and waivers. And as I mentioned, there's lifetime eligibility. So if you decide that you want to go to school immediately after you leave Peace Corps, you can use it. If you decide you want to go to school 30 years after you completed Peace Corps, as long as you're a returned Peace Corps volunteer, you'll have access to this money for increased or additional education. Here's the application process. It's generally a very seamless process. It's actually changed over the last couple of years. So when I applied in 2013, it was about 6 or 7 hour process for me to fill out my application and submit it. The application process right now takes about an hour to complete if you have your resume and your motivation statement already created. And as a recruiter, I'm more than happy to help you with those if you need. But what you'll do is you'll go to the website, you'll browse our applications or our openings that are currently available. You'll apply. It takes about an hour, and then once you hit submit, our software will generate a health history form for you to complete. You have to complete it in about 42 or 48 to 72 hours. And once you hit submit, your application as a whole will be completed and reviewed by a placement officer. If they determine that you are competitive for Peace Corps service, you will then be selected for an interview, and you will interview with that placement officer. If you're deemed competitive for Peace Corps service, you will receive an invitation to serve in the country that you're under consideration for, and you will start the medical and legal clearance process. Once that is all said and done, you will receive your official invitation, so you'll be completely cleared for Peace Corps service, and you'll start the onboarding process, which is training, learning a little bit about your country. You'll be given welcome books or like the cultural book that I mentioned that was sent out to volunteers that were a part of Kosovo 2 cohort. We were a part of creating that for them, and that was sent to new trainees. So onboarding process is where they get that information. And after that's said and done, you'll meet with your cohort here in the United States for staging and orientation, and together you'll depart for service as a cohort. This is what you may see when you look on the website. If you go to peacecorps.gov/openings, we have all of our currently available programs listed. If you're interested in applying for a specific program, say in education, you can sort of search just by education. If you're interested in serving in a Spanish-speaking country, you can search by language requirements. Or if you're interested in serving as a couple, you can search just by the countries that accept couples. All of our programs that are currently available are going to be in this format, and when you click on the link, it'll take you to the program description, and it'll give you additional information about exactly what volunteers may do who serve in that position. If you're interested in multiple positions, or you're really more interested in serving but not really in a particular region, we do have the opportunity for you to apply where you're needed most. So even though you can only have one application open at a time, it sort of takes the choice factor away from you and allows our placement officers to place you in a high needs country that matches your skills and your experience. Application timing. So along with the application being a lot faster, the application timing is also more transparent than it's ever been. So we have yearly 4 application deadlines, and each position is going to have 3 need to know dates. So we have an apply by date, a know by date, and a part by date. Our apply by dates are January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. And like I said, the July 1st one is right around the corner. You will know if you do apply by the July 1st deadline by September 1st if you aren't going to the Peace Corps. So you'll receive your invitation no later than September 1st. And those positions depart by between January and February of next year. So for example, if you're a senior and you're interested in leaving, July 1st would be perfect time for you to apply. If you're a junior and still trying to figure out what you may want to do, October 1st might be a really good opportunity or a really good time period for you to apply. By December 1st, you'll know if you're accepted, and you might not be able to leave between April and May, but you might be, it might be just in time for you to leave by June of next year if you're interested in sort of having your post-graduate sort of plans already set. A few application tips, and I highly encourage applicants to do this when I speak with them, is apply early. The earlier you apply, the more likely you are to get your application reviewed by a placement officer and to get an interview early. It helps to tailor your resume. So if you are interested in, a specific education program, speak to your skills and experience in, teaching English as a second language or science or math, or tutorial experience you have. If you're interested in applying for one of our community economic development positions, talk about your business courses or the time that you, helped balance a budget for one of your student organizations. Anything that speaks to how you would be an effective volunteer in that specific position will make your application more competitive. And of course, applicants who connect with a recruiter are 50% more likely to become volunteers just because they have more of an insight into the application process and ways to make themselves more competitive. So things like joint info sessions like this will definitely uh, help you in becoming more competitive for Peace Corps service. Also, like I mentioned, I'm more than happy to do resume, motivation statement review to help you if you're interested in more than one program or trying to figure out which application method, apply to go anywhere or apply to a different program works best for you. And feel free to reach out to me if you're interested. So for example, if you would like to set up a time to chat by phone, feel free to email me. You can email me at tamorimaywood@peacecorps.gov. You can also give me a call. I'm here in my house. I'd be happy to chat with you about anything that you need to know about my service, or if you're interested in serving in a specific country, I'm happy to put you in touch with a volunteer that's served in that country or served in that specific sector. So yeah, I'll leave this information up for you if you're interested in jotting this down and connecting with me. Also too, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I might have sped through that a little bit fast, but I also wanted to leave time to sort of open up for questions. And it looks like we have a bit of an intimate gathering today, so feel free to unmute yourself if you do have a question, and I'll be happy to answer it for you.
Danny, Kim, Edgar, do any of you have a question?
No, not really. A lot of them, I guess, were answered. So
Awesome.
Sorry, me, but I was wondering if the recording was going to be posted.
Yes, I'll share the recording with John and Mercedes so that they can send it out to you. And also, I believe you mentioned that it'll be posted on your social media or so for students to take a look at. And of course, if you do have any future questions, you have my information here. Feel free to reach out. We also have other national events coming up. We have an application workshop that sort of shows you an insight step-by-step process of what it looks like to apply. That'll be facilitated by one of my colleagues. And we also have a Return Peace Corps Volunteers Story Slam that'll be next month as well. And I can share out those times and dates with Mercedes and John as well to share out with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we do plan to put this on our YouTube channel, but we can also put it on our website too, so that students have access to it. And I'll probably send it out to my students by email as well.
Mm-hmm. Tamori, I have a question. Can you explain a little bit more about, you were talking about the student loans, what kind of student loans the student can take advantage of if they do Peace Corps?
So yeah, that's a really great question, and actually, it's a topic that is very near and dear to my heart since I entered into Peace Corps service with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of student loan debt. But when it comes to actually return, so Peace Corps doesn't actually have a student loan forgiveness plan of itself. But as I mentioned, as a U.S. government agency, Peace Corps service is considered civil service. And so with federal student loans, you have the option of deferring your payments while you're in the student, while you're Peace Corps volunteering. They'll notarize your information. You'll send it out to your loan providers. I heavily encourage talking more with your loan providers to see what sort of paperwork you may need. But also to Peace Corps volunteers have the ability to tap into what's called an allotment fund. And so the $10,000 that I mentioned, while it's given to volunteers after they complete their service. It actually accumulates on a month-to-month basis for every month that you complete Peace Corps service successfully. And so you have the ability to tap into about 75% of that money and allot it to a bill or a responsibility back in the United States. And one of the things that I did when I was a Peace Corps volunteer was I tapped into that readjustment allowance, requested an allotment to sort of pay toward and down my student loans while I was in service. I didn't have access to it for the first 3 months because volunteers and trainee are considered Peace Corps trainees and not official volunteers. So you will have to have a buffer if you're interested in doing something like that, but it's something that you can tap into. When I did complete service, my readjustment allowance was cut in half. And so I didn't get, the same $10,000 that other people would have received who didn't take advantage of that opportunity. But I was able to pay down my student loans that were interest bearing. So I didn't have to accumulate a lot of debt while I was in service. And though I did get a smaller readjustment allowance, that was at least a financial responsibility that I didn't have to worry about when I was in service. In terms of other opportunities that your loan providers may have, like I said, heavily encourage chatting with them about that. Peace Corps also has a website page, a URL that I can also share out with Mercedes and John as well to send to you all, that talks a little bit more about it. Again, it's not really Peace Corps say in terms of how your loan providers allow you to do stuff. Private student loans are, again, a totally different ball game, so talk to your loan provider. But I know that, at least for myself, with that allotment availability, it was something that I think completely it helped to give me comfort in Peace Corps that I was getting my needs met in Peace Corps with the living stipend, and I was also taking care of a financial responsibility in the United States that I wouldn't have been able to do so without that access to those funds. It's a good question.
And maybe if you can share something to take away from your experience that when you did Peace Corps, and what is something that it was helpful, maybe applying to the job that you have right now? It was an advantage. It helped you a little bit with getting this kind of job after you did Peace Corps.
Yeah, so I'm biased. I'll say that. I'll always start it like that. I had a generally amazing service. I wouldn't be doing this if otherwise, but I do believe that there's a benefit in doing the Peace Corps for multiple reasons, the cross-cultural component, but yeah, the tangible skills that it does give you after service as well. I have an international affairs background, so I have my bachelor's degree in international affairs, and I sort of realized early on that there wasn't a lot I could do with that unless I actually spent some time overseas. So Peace Corps was always something that I knew that I was going to do. When I applied for Peace Corps service, there wasn't the opportunity to choose where I served. So I wouldn't have chosen Kosovo because I didn't know it existed at the time that I applied. But I'm immensely thankful that I was able to live and work and learn about a different culture that was completely different from my own. I learned in school about Yugoslavia, and then in college about the breakdown of Yugoslavia, and then to go and live in that area for 2 years was an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. But also now with Volunteer's Choice, if you have a specific area, specific region that you want to strengthen yourself in, for example, if you're interested in becoming fluent in Spanish, or practicing your French, or learning Portuguese, or so, volunteers across the globe are required to do language training, and a lot of volunteers leave service completely fluent in their language of service, which is that's immensely beneficial when you're looking for job opportunities. The non-competitive eligibility that I mentioned, Peace Corps as a federal agency, I was able to use NCE to get this job, so that is a definite benefit. And I've heard of cohort members of mine who are now working in the Small Business Administration, and who are working in the EPA because they were able to leverage their NCE. Some of the volunteers in my cohort went to school Yale is one of the ones that has a Peace Corps Coverdell Fellows Program in International Affairs. I know someone in the cohort after me went to that school, and others pursued graduate opportunities at a discounted level because of Peace Corps service. And so Peace Corps service is definitely one that is immensely beneficial to consider, even though you will spend 2 years of your life as a volunteer, not making a lot of money or, US specific salaries. It is a launching pad into a career. And that's not just in the public or nonprofit sector. There are a lot of people in the private sector who've done Peace Corps as well and consider their 2 years of experience as beneficial and sort of ground laying for what they're doing now. I hope that answered your question. I might have.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes, definitely. And also I hear a lot of people that I know, and they are doctors. They did the Peace Corps and they applied to med school. So I think I don't know if this is true for a lot of people. They do Peace Corps and then come back and they do they go to the medical school. They go to do some kind of research. So in their application, I think after they done Peace Corps, it was well received. And I think that's my experience, that I hear a lot of people that I know, they did Peace Corps and their application was really different than other applicants. So I think that was an advantage.
Yep. We have a lot of people, a lot of pre-med applicants that are deciding to do Peace Corps these days. So yeah, a lot of people who want to go into public health as well, serving in the health sector. So definitely if you're interested in that avenue, Peace Corps could be your launching pad.
Thank you.
I'm happy to stay on and answer any other questions, but if not, I will let you guys go. You can get some lunch as well, and I will share this recording out with your advisor so that they can share it with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamari. Thank you, Denny, Kim, and Edgar. Do you have any question? I don't see it.
Oh, they're saying thank you. Take care. Take care.
Said that he didn't have any questions right now, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.